Call to order the meeting of the Verona Plan Commission for Wednesday, April 6th, 2022 at 6:31 p.m. We'll have the roll.
Commissioner Tucker Long.
Here.
Commissioner Wood.
Here.
Mayor Diaz.
Here.
Commissioner Lytle. Here. And Alderperson Posey.
Here.
All right, we have enough people for quorum. We'll move into item 3, which is public comment. If anyone from the public wishes to speak, now would be the time to do so. Unless it's for one, if it's a comment about one of the public hearing topics, you should try to make it under the public hearing on the agenda. That being said, I don't see anyone heading up to the microphone anyway, so we will move on to item 4, which is approval of minutes from the March 7th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Questions, comments, corrections, or motions to approve? Commissioner Tucker Long.
I'll move that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Motion by Commissioner Tucker Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Posey. Last chance for corrections? Seeing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the March 7th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. The minutes are approved. Next, we'll move on to item 5, which is regarding a zoning map amendment to rezone 2.3 acres of land located at 101 Prairie Heights Drive from neighborhood office to urban residential. Before we get into the public hearing part, could we get a brief overview, Mr. Sayer?
Thank you. This is a public hearing tonight to rezone the property located at 101 Prairie Heights Drive. The purpose of the rezoning is to rezone it from neighborhood office to urban residential, which is one of our multifamily zoning districts. Immediately after this item on the agenda, there is also a topic for a site plan review for the applicant to construct 10 townhomes for a total of 20 units located on this property. This does require a public hearing before the Planning Commission. As part of this, we did mail out the notice to the surrounding properties, posted a public hearing notice sign on the paper, and also published a Class 2 public hearing notice in the newspaper. And this is a recommendation on the rezoning tonight to the Common Council.
Thank you for that explanation. With that, I will move we open the public hearing on this topic. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Lytle. All those in favor of opening the public hearing on this topic, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And we're in the public hearing regarding the zoning map amendment at 6:34 p.m. So if anyone wishes to speak on the zoning map amendment, now would be the time to do so. Seeing nobody moving towards the microphone, a motion to close the public hearing would be in order. Alder Posey.
Move to close the hearing.
Motion by Alder Posey. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Wood. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And the public hearing is closed at 6:34 p.m. Mr. Zaire.
Thank you. The property in question is before you on the screen, highlighted in yellow. This entire area, kind of north of 18151, began developing kind of in the late 1990s, and this is one of the original parcels or areas of the kind of overall planned development, which is encompassed by, on the west side by Locust Drive, 18151 on the south, and County Highway M on the east. So there's only a couple vacant parcels left, including this one, and there's been challenges in having this property developed. There is a significant amount of bedrock on this site, which makes any type of development challenging. It's also challenging, too, because it has been planned as a commercial land. The 19 townhouse units. They did have interest in kind of hopefully building a 2 or 3 story multi-family apartment building, but they have come back tonight with proposed 10 townhomes. Each one of these townhomes would have 2 units each on each side, so it would be kind of side by side with the housing. They would have an attached garage on the rear of it. There would be a 2-car attached garage. From a zoning and planning standpoint, the proposed project meets all the required setbacks and requirements of the zoning ordinance. Access to the site would be from Prairie Heights Drive, be two access points, one kind of coming in on the west and looping on the east. We worked with the applicant as part of this as well. We were very conscious of not allowing direct access onto Locust Drive. That's a busier road. And with the sightlines on that road and the hill there, it just wasn't appropriate to have access in that location. But strictly from a use standpoint, and staff is kind of comfortable with how this property has been laid out. Some of these units will have basements, some of them will not. It's going to depend on that bedrock issue in question that I mentioned previously. But once, like I said, these would be two-car garages, three-bedroom units in here on each for each unit. And it'd be, side-by-side townhomes. Proposed design it's a nice-looking buildings they're proposing. They would have fiber cement siding and board and batten accents as well as cultured stone on the base of it. Staff is supportive of design. It fits with the area. There's existing kind of multifamily to the north of this as well, but then there's single family to the south. So it's a nice kind of transition as you kind of peak the top of Locust Drive and head over 18151. Staff doesn't have any concerns with it. As for all site plans, we did go through the findings of facts in the ordinance, and the request does meet the requirements for that. As previously said, this does require a rezoning from the neighborhood office district into the urban residential zoning district. Staff is supportive of the rezone. We went through the findings of fact on that as well, and does meet the findings of facts in the ordinance. So we are supportive of this property being developed as townhomes. Like I said, it's a tough site. The applicant has done a nice job of laying this out. It's providing a type of housing that we haven't seen as much recently in the city. So it checks a lot of boxes, at least from a staff standpoint. So with that, staff recommends the Plan Commission recommend the Common Council approval of the zoning map amendment to rezone 101 Prairie Heights from neighborhood office to urban residential with the following condition: that the approval shall become effective upon the applicant acquiring the property. And staff also recommends the Plan Commission approve the site plan to allow for the construction of 10 townhome buildings to house a total of 20 townhome units located at 101 Prairie Heights Drive with the following conditions. 1, prior to the issuance of building permits, the applicant shall provide the city with a letter of credit or escrow for all work associated with the water main construction. They do have to cut into Locust Drive, and as part of that, we need some financial assurances that when you're cutting into a public roadway, that if for some reason the work stops, the city has to have the ability to complete that to make sure that road stays open. So that's why that's required. And then the second condition would be that the lighting near Locust Drive must conform to the required lighting levels through the coordination with planning staff. Some of the light levels in that location were a little bit high, so they need to make some minor modifications to the photometric plan. Staff would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the explanation. With that, questions, comments, or motions on the zoning map amendment? Alder Posey.
I'll just comment in support of changing this over to the urban residential. I think it's a great use for land that we've been attempting to have used in the previous zoning, and so I think it's a good use, especially with the townhomes or twin homes, however we're wording them, coming in.
Other thoughts from the Plan Commission or motions? Commissioner Tucker-Long.
I move that we recommend to the Common Council that they approve the zoning map amendment to rezone 101 Prairie Heights Drive from the current classification of neighborhood office to urban residential with the following condition: that the approval shall become effective upon the applicant acquiring the property.
Motion by Commissioner Tucker-Long. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Posey. Anything to add, Commissioner Tucker-Long? I'll just call myself real quick. Yeah, I like this project overall. I think this provides a different sort of housing, as noted in the staff report, that we haven't seen as much. And I like variety, and I think it makes the city more resilient and stronger. So I hope the council approves it. And I hope the Plan Commission recommends the council to approve it. But motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of recommending to the Common Council to approve the zoning map amendment to rezone 101 Prairie Heights Drive from neighborhood office to urban residential with the conditions specified in the packet, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Next, we will move on to the discussion and possible action regarding the site plan review for the 10 townhome buildings with a total of 20 units located at 101 Prairie Heights Drive. Questions, comments, or motions on the site plan? Commissioner Tucker-Long.
I have a quick question on the drive-in. Is that going to be like a private drive, or is that an actual street that we're plowing?
No, it's a private access drive, no different than a drive coming into like a apartment building complex or other condos in the city. So no, it would not be the city's, it would be the, the owner of the property.
Okay.
Questions, comments, or motions? Commissioner Lytle.
Thanks. It wasn't obvious to me if there are expectations for visitor parking. It just seems like any car that's not either in front of a garage or parked over on Prairie Heights Drive would create traffic flow issues. I don't think that's a requirement that they have parking for guests, but did that come up at all in the review of the materials?
Mr. Sayre?
Yeah, from a staff standpoint, yeah, kind of how you pointed out there, each unit would have a two-car garage with the assumption then you could stack it kind of behind that as well. I mean, that's, from our standpoint, it was no different than a single-family house. So, as we kind of looked at it, no different than my house and most houses, that they would have, potentially two cars in the garage, and then also potentially the two cars kind of sitting outside as well too. And obviously, if there's some overflow, it could end up on the street. But from our standpoint, we didn't really see a need to add additional parking on the site, just because the setup they have is, like I said, no different than a house, a normal house in the city, which has the same situation.
Yeah, thank you. I think just, I don't know if anyone representing the owners or developers is here tonight, but, making it clear either through signage or when people are purchasing units that, if you're having a birthday party, it's not something just because you don't think your neighbors are home doesn't mean you can use the parking spaces in front of theirs. And, just be a good neighbor. But obviously, some other townhomes around the city, I know we've had issues with people sort of taking parking spots that weren't theirs, which creates neighbor issues. So otherwise, fully supportive of the site plan.
Other questions, comments, or motions on this item? Alder Posey.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the Common Council approve the site plan to allow for the construction of 10 townhome buildings to have...
Is there confusion?
I believe we are on the actual step of not the zoning, but the actual approval of the site plan, correct?
And it gets approved here, and it doesn't go to the council.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I was trying to jump in and... Okay, so I recommend that the Plan Commission approve the site plan to allow for the construction of 10 townhome buildings to house a total of 20 townhome units located at 101 Prairie Heights Drive with the following condition. Prior to the issuance of building permits, the applicant shall provide the city with a letter of credit or escrow for all work associated with the water main construction, and lighting near Locust Drive must conform to the required lighting levels through coordination with planning staff.
Motion by Alder Posey. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Lytle. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the site plan for the 10 townhome buildings with a total of 20 units located at 101 Prairie Heights Drive with the conditions specified in the packet, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Next, we'll move on to item 6, which is regarding a conditional use permit for approximately 1 acre of outdoor storage, permanent outdoor storage located at 2147 County Highway PB. Mr. Sayre, can you give us a brief overview before the public hearing?
Thank you. This is a conditional use permit for Alliant to expand their existing outdoor storage area located along County Highway PB and County Highway M. This does require a conditional use permit. As part of that, it does require a public hearing before the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission then will make a recommendation to the Common Council on this item. As part of this process, we did notify the surrounding neighbors. We posted a public notification sign on the property, had a Class 2 public hearing notice in the paper, and then, like all projects, we put this on the city's website as well. So once again, this is a recommendation tonight on the conditional use permit to the Common Council.
Thank you for that explanation. I will move that we open the public hearing regarding the conditional use permit for approximately 1 acre of outdoor storage, permanent outdoor storage located at 2147 County Highway PB. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Tucker Long. All those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We were in the public hearing at 6:47 PM. Not seeing anyone approaching the microphone, I would accept a motion to close the public hearing. Commissioner Tucker Long.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Motion by Commissioner Tucker Long. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Posey. All those in favor of closing the public hearing on this topic, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. And the public hearing is closed at 6:47 PM. Mr. Sayer.
Thank you. So tonight we have the conditional use permit for the outdoor storage area, which is the use aspect, and we also have the site plan as well. Once again, property in question is highlighted on red in the screen before you. Alliant has an existing storage kind of area in this location. And what they're looking at doing is actually expanding the existing one to have some additional space on the site as well. This does require a conditional use permit in that zoning district, which is the SI zoning district. In essence, it's the red area that they're expanding. You can kind of see in the light gray to the right of that red area. The darker area is the expansion area. So access to this would not change. There'd be an internal kind of loop going through the storage area, kind of similar to what they have in the current site, but there'd be that loop kind of going to it. Staff doesn't have any concerns with the layout of this. There's a rather large berm on the kind of just north of where this is going. It's highlighted in green on the screen before you. It's also identified as that landscape area. The applicant intends to kind of landscape that area consistent with what they have out there today. That is one thing that was kind of missing in the submittal. The applicant is still in the process of putting that together. So if this is recommended for approval tonight, we'd recommend a condition be placed on that. As part of this, the lighting on the site would be consistent with what's out there today. Staff doesn't have any concerns with it. In general, it's an expansion of what's out there. We haven't had any issues with the storage area. It's run by Alliant, and obviously they're electric utility, and that's a pretty essential use and need for all of us. So staff is kind of comfortable with this expansion. We did go through the findings of facts for the site plan and the conditional use permit, and it does meet those requirements. And staff recommends, the Plan Commission recommended the Common Council approval of the conditional use permit for a permanent outdoor storage area located at 2147 County Highway PB with the following condition: that a landscaping plan be presented and approved by planning staff prior to the issuance of building permits. Once again, they intend to landscape that area, it's just the landscape architect hasn't had time to kind of get that finalized and completed. And then second, staff recommends the Plan Commission approve the site plan for the permanent outdoor storage location located at 2147 County Highway PB. I know the applicant is here tonight. He'd be happy to answer any questions from the Plan Commission.
Thank you for that explanation. We will start with the conditional use permit for the permanent outdoor storage located at 2147 County Highway PB. Questions, comments, or motions on this item? Alder Posey.
I'll go ahead and recommend that the Common Council approve, our lovely big packet. That we recommend the Common Council approve the conditional use permit for the permanent outdoor storage located at 2147 County Highway PD with the following condition: a landscaping plan will be presented and approved by planning staff prior to issuance of building permits.
Motion by Alder Posey. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Tucker Long. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Commissioner Lytle.
Thank you. I don't think I've had to do this before. My employer does a fair bit of work for Alliant, so I'm going to abstain for the next two agenda items.
Thank you. It will be noted in the minutes. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of recommending to the Common Council to approve the conditional use permit for permanent outdoor storage located at 2147 County Highway PB with the conditions specified in the packet, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. And let the minutes show that Commissioner Lytle abstained from the vote. With that, we'll move on to 6B, which is a discussion and possible action regarding site plan review for permanent outdoor storage located at 2147 County Highway PB. Questions, comments, or motions on this one? Commissioner Tucker-Long.
I have a question for staff. Should the site plan approval also have a condition about the landscaping plan being submitted?
Mr. Chair?
No, the conditional use permit is sufficient.
Okay. In that case, I move that we approve the site plan for permanent outdoor storage located at 2147 County Highway PB.
Motion by Commissioner Tucker-Long. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Wood. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on this motion? I'm going to call myself real quick and say this isn't part of the approval condition, but I would highly encourage Alliant Energy to put solar panels up on their property. I mean, it's obvious the climate's changing, and we all need to do our part. And I think Alliant has the ability to do a lot more than the average citizen. I mean, I have solar panels on my house, and I would be thrilled if Alliant would put up solar panels on their property. But, you know, regardless of that, I'm definitely in favor of approving the site plan because it fits in with the location, and I think it's a necessary use. Other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the site plan for the permanent outdoor storage located at 2147 County Highway PB, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. And once again, let the minutes show that Commissioner Lytle abstained from the vote. With that, we will move on to item 7, which is a discussion and possible action regarding a site plan review for 3 structures located at 1979 Milky Way. Mr. Sayre.
Thank you. I guess before I get in the report, this is, in the past with Epic's expansions, we have done these as conditional use permits, if you recall. With the new zoning ordinances, there are now site plan reviews and potential approvals before the Plan Commission. So previously, it was a conditional use for the group development classification. That has gone away with the new ordinance. So that's why, if anyone has any questions of why the process might look a little different, it's because of the new ordinance that was changed. So Epic is here tonight looking for site plan approval to construct an office building, a restaurant for their employees, and a bakery as part of their Campus 5. So we have the new office building, which is it's called Sci-Fi. It's in the orange here. The restaurant portion would be the red area here, and the bakery portion would be that purplish kind of color there. Once again, this does take site plan approval. This is approval by the Plan Commission. Staff has reviewed the project. It is consistent with our zoning ordinance, and it does conform to the setbacks and the bulk requirements that we have in place. We did an extensive kind of replat of this whole area back in 2020, if you recall. This is where we took all the parcels and cleaned those up and made this one parcel. So it is consistent with those new parcel lines that we established. From an access and parking standpoint, access would be consistent with what's out there today. Staff has no concerns with that. From a parking standpoint, there are some rather large parking structures that are underground in this location, and there is sufficient parking within those parking structures to accommodate this new office building and other buildings as well. So staff has no concerns from a parking standpoint. Once again, just kind of a zoomed-in view here. You have the Sci-Fi building kind of adjacent to the parking structure. The parking structure, for reference purposes, is the dashed line through here. So this building would not be sitting on it, but immediately adjacent to it. The buildings themselves, this is the office building. It does have that sci-fi theme to it. Epic has a long track record of doing some unique designs, but every building out there turns out, quite honestly, phenomenal. I've to be honest, I've been skeptical years ago on some of these buildings, and, obviously, they're all unique, and that's what their intent is, but the quality of architecture and design they put into these is actually quite unbelievable as you kind of get out there. So once again, similar to other buildings, it's a unique and creative design. That's what Epic is about, and staff is comfortable with the design. It's consistent with what's out there. It's consistent with the other buildings in that area as well. This is the restaurant portion of it. It would be kind of sunken into that kind of the hill that's out there. So it would have that green roof component to as well, along with some features kind of sitting above there. It'd also have some potential outdoor seating area for those employees if they're having lunch or a snack out there as well too. Staff doesn't have any concerns with this. Once again, this is consistent with kind of what else is on the campus as well. This is kind of the bakery area. This would be used to make, I believe, breads and bakery items for their cafeterias. This, once again, is kind of sunken in to the parking ramp itself. This will not be that visible, if at all, from the roadway or even from most people that are coming into the campus. Staff doesn't have any concerns with that either. So we did go through the findings of facts as part of this, and we do believe it meets the requirements to potentially grant approval of a site plan. And with that, staff recommends the Plan Commission approve the site plan for one office building, a restaurant, and a bakery as part of Campus 5 located at 1979 Milky Way. The applicant is here tonight. He'd be happy to answer any questions from the Plan Commission.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions or comments from the Plan Commission? I did have one quick question. On the slide we were just looking at, there was a wildlife fence. It was like the last one. The bakery. Yeah, that one. I mean, I guess the wildlife fence is for keeping wildlife out? Is that, like, I guess I'm just, like, is there going to be a garden there, or? From falling off? Okay.
Jim.
All right. Well, was that it? Okay.
Jim Schumacher with Epic Systems. That fence is to keep people from falling off the top of the ramp.
Okay.
Similar to the fence that's on top of Deep Space. It's a barrier before the edge.
So like human wildlife.
Human wildlife.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Any other questions, I guess, for the applicant, as long as Mr. Schumacher's up here? No? Okay. Thank you. Questions, comments, or motions on this item? Alder Posey.
I'll just comment that I really enjoy seeing these designs when they come to us. And of course, prior to sitting up here, seeing them as they were being built or brought to our community, I think it's really neat. I know people in our community really like seeing these designs and even walking the campus and enjoying that we have such a unique facility here. And I'll just share that I really enjoy the design of the restaurant and the fact that you've sunk in kind of an industrial building almost, if we could say that, for the bakery, that's sunken in where it wouldn't be seen, because that was a concern of mine. But, so, thank you.
Commissioner Tucker-Long.
I agree with what Alder Posey said. I love the designs. I love the green roofs. That's awesome. And so I would like to move that I would like to move that we approve the site plan for one office building called Sci-Fi, Restaurant 42, and the bakery as part of Campus 5, located at 1979 Milky Way.
Motion by Commissioner Tucker-Long. Is there a second? Second by Alder Posey. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Commissioner Lytle.
Not a substantive comment, but I did take a little too much pleasure in getting the Restaurant 42 reference as part of the sci-fi theme. So nice pull.
Other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the site plan for one office building called Sci-Fi, Restaurant 42, and the bakery as part of Campus 5 located at 1979 Milky Way, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And the site plan is approved. With that, we'll move on to item 8, which is a discussion and possible action regarding a site plan review for a facade and parking lot change located at 531 Commerce Parkway. Ms. Holt.
The property is highlighted in yellow on this slide. It is a site plan review to keep the existing building shell and improve the site plan. The property is zoned urban industrial and is located in the older portion of the city's industrial zoning district. Access to the site will remain from South 9 Mound Road and Carmos Parkway. 20 parking spaces are added to the front of the building to accommodate the new tenant. The applicant and the city engineer continue discussions regarding the stormwater plans, but you can see on the site plan here, there's a small area located in the corner of Carmos Parkway and South 9 Mound Road. New native landscaping is being added to the property to screen the parking area from the road. This is the existing building with no landscaping and the outdated building materials. Any landscaping is considered an improvement from what's there today. And this is their proposal to add additional windows to the north and the east-facing facades, including daylighting, windows facing South 9 Mound Road. A more pronounced entrance is created in front of the building and will activate the area. As with all site plan reviews, the applicant has met the site plan review considerations. Staff recommends the Plan Commission approve the site plan for the facade and parking lot changes located at 531 Commerce Parkway.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions, comments, or motions on this item? Alder Posey.
I'll comment that I'm really excited to see this change at this property. I do, ride 9 Mound to go to the bike trail quite a bit during the nicer weather, and this is a really great way to see that this property being used, and the better landscaping is really welcome.
Questions, comments, or motions on this item? Commissioner Tucker-Long.
I move that we approve the site plan for facade and parking lot changes located at 531 Commerce Parkway. And I'll also just comment that I think the building looks great, and I think it's awesome that they're adding native plantings for the landscaping.
Motion by Commissioner Tucker-Long. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Posey. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? I'll just add, I think it looks good as well, and yeah, wish nothing but success. Seeing no further discussion, I will call the question. All those in favor of approving the site plan for the facade and parking lot changes located at 531 Commerce Parkway, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? That motion passes. We will move on to item 9, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the initial review to construct an approximately 39,990 square foot addition to the existing ice arena located at 451 East Verona Avenue. Ms. Holt.
So the property is shown in yellow, which is the ice arena located on East Verona Avenue and actually, it's just behind our building right now, diagonal. The applicant is requesting an initial review, which means the applicant wants feedback from the Plan Commission on the application. The property is zoned public institutional and consists of approximately 3.86 acres. The applicant is proposing a 5,625 square foot addition on the front of the existing building, shown in teal, to house additional locker rooms, and an addition in the rear of approximately 34,815 square feet for an additional sheet of ice, locker rooms, and the ability to seat up to 800 spectators. The staff report contains a table listing out the bulk requirements and if they are met. The only item that is not met is the lot coverage at this time, but this is an initial review, so plans can change. The applicant is maintaining the existing building setbacks and will keep the berm that's in front of the building today. Staff is comfortable with all the setbacks at this time. Access will continue from East Verona Avenue with a continuation of the existing entrance sidewalk along the side of the building going south. The applicant is proposing 52 parking stalls, which requires an electric charging station. Bicycle parking is shown near the southern entrance and would be monitored. Well, staff recommends it be monitored if there's a need for more bicycle parking, mostly for figure skaters, probably not for hockey players. The applicant has shown future parking along the baseball field, which staff has reservations to this idea, and if it will ever be needed. The applicant is proposing a one-story, 27-foot tall building addition. The color and style will match what the building is there today. Although not required, a lighting plan was submitted. Staff recommends the applicant modify the lighting levels to ensure that the lighting is within the acceptable range at the property lines. And a landscaping plan was included and has a mix of deciduous and evergreen trees. But again, staff suggests the applicant add additional plantings along the front berm as the trees are starting to age out there. So with that, staff recommends the Plan Commission review the submitted materials and provide feedback to the applicant as they plan to submit a site review to go before the Plan Commission next month.
Thank you for that explanation. Feedback from the Plan Commission. Oh, Commissioner Wood.
So I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. So it's 52 additional parking spots?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thoughts from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Tucker-Long.
So a couple of thoughts. One, looking at where the paving is going. So it looks like the majority of the 52 parking spaces are at the back of the property. Is there a setback for the back of the property? The packet only mentioned front and sides.
Mr. Sarr?
There's a setback to the building. I don't know if there's a pavement setback, but there is a setback to the building. And even if there was a pavement setback, I mean, it looks like it's at least 5-10 feet, which is probably sufficient enough.
Okay. And then I'm wondering, it looks like there's like a turnaround at the end of the parking lot and then perhaps a drive that goes around the back and in between the two buildings. Am I reading that correctly?
Correct. So the drive, so the Verona Avenue is at the top here. North is usually the top, hopefully, if they've done it right. And then there's some parallel parking spaces kind of along this drive aisle through here.
Okay.
And it's a little blurry, I apologize for that. And there would be a kind of a dedicated drop-off location here. And then this is the existing, there's a path that if you ever walked from like hometown days and parked over there, that's that path that it would kind of hook into. And you'd have the bulk of the parking through here. There's a hammerhead kind of turnaround that's partially for the plow trucks as we get through there and plow.
Okay.
And the back side here, I believe that's where some of those, the snow, I'm not a hockey player, but I believe that's where the ice is kind of shoveled off some of those rinks, and it's kind of placed there as well. So there would not be a kind of a public access point from the back here. Mm-hmm. In essence, it would kind of stop there, and this would be only for maintenance purposes.
Okay. Okay. So I guess I'm wondering if those 52 parking spots are really needed. I mean, it's on a very large parking lot already, and if we're talking about being that far over the impervious surface on the lot, I guess in order to approve going that far over, I'd want to have some data about those parking spots being really needed. Also, there's another big parking lot right behind the buildings by the VACT, and I wonder if there would be any way to sort of hook into that and maybe share a parking lot just to try to have less paved surface or less new paved surface. So that might be a possibility. As far as like the building use, I think it's great. I love that the ice can be dry as well, so they can host other kinds of activities in there as well. I think that's great. The outside of the building I'm not super keen on. It looks very industrial and not very nice, and it's right along like the main drive through town, so I wouldn't mind if it had some like stone added to it or some wood, kind of like the last building we were looking at where it has some different designs to sort of break up how massive the building looks. But other than that, yeah, those are my comments.
Other thoughts from the Plan Commission? Oh, Alder Posey.
Going off of the concerns with the parking, I am there, of course, on Sundays when there's people leaving public skate and there's people arriving, and there's a lot of people walking that parking lot. So I'm just a little bit concerned with how that drop-off space is going to be set up, and also the crossings for having people actually driving down past the existing building to that second parking lot. Because right now, everybody turns left or is coming out, and it's kind of hectic just as it is. But if we've got additional parking going down towards that other end, I'd be concerned for pedestrian safety in the lot. So if that's something that can be considered going forward, because I don't know the exact solution. I'm partial to just saying losing the ones along the drive so that people can see and nobody's backing out in front of somebody else, and just having the lot that's on the far end. So, but otherwise, I think one question I did have for the applicant was around, I heard that there's going to be seating for 800 in the second rink, but I didn't see a design that involved the stands or anything along those lines in that second one. Is there, at least not that I saw,
Hi, I'm Ray White, architect with Dimension 4, the architect for the project. What we've indicated is bleacher seating for 800, which will accommodate ADA as well as some walkway underneath for accessing the locker rooms on the south. But the bleacher design themselves is kind of a, we give them the requirements, and then the bleacher company would design the specific. For the final design to get approved.
I was just curious, because looking at the design, I actually had that question because it looked more like a practice rink because it didn't see that seating. So, and I know that that was kind of the big purpose of this, is to be able to host large tournament events. So that's why I was curious specifically about that seating. So, thank you.
Correct. So the bleacher seating will be a little bit larger than the existing rink. The existing rink is a Olympic-sized ice arena. And then the new one would be an NHL-sized rink, which, believe it or not, is smaller than an Olympic-sized rink. But Verona is one of the few Olympic-sized rinks around. The Kohl Center has an Olympic-sized rink, and I think McFarland does as well. But most of the other ones in town are either the NHL size or smaller in Dane County. But it is able to host high school games, tournaments, that type of thing. And again, the more typical rink is the slightly narrower, smaller rink. Just one comment. I know the arena is, there is the shared parking lot that, as you mentioned, that kind of goes off to the east, kind of at the northeast corner currently, which is shared with the ball fields. Being that this second rink, it'll have its own standalone entrance for game night or whatever it is. They don't anticipate two big events at once, that it would be either, like Verona's home ice, and then they would not schedule something at the same time in the other rink. There might be youth practices, so it'll have its own entrance, though, for if there is a game night in the southern rink. So that parking on the south and southeast is kind of important to get the parking capacity. The majority of use of this is in bad weather. So, the idea of people being, and kids hauling hockey bags and such to and from the rink. So that is why they were trying to do that, and why the applicant asked us to propose that those parking stalls on the east side of the rink as well, just to kind of give that parking capacity closer to that second entrance, which is at the southeast corner. The hammerhead is also, that was mentioned, I'll just add this, that's also for a fire lane turnaround.
I'm sorry, but in general, it's just question and answer.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So, because otherwise, it's pretty empty right now, but sometimes if we have a full house, people would definitely like to interrupt us.
Okay,
So,
I was just explaining the hammerhead, but I can stop.
yeah, if you could, thank you.
Okay.
Alder Posey.
Yeah, I did just want to stress that the greatest point of concern that I have is during community-based events, not the hockey events. And that's what I've seen the issues with pedestrians and specifically small children running across the street or with parents and not being seen, or they're coming across. So, and those are events that do change over. There's changeover time where one event's coming, one event is leaving. And so this has just been my experience with the rink has been, and this has been a routine thing. So if that's something that can be taken into consideration, how to have safe pedestrian walkways through or around the lots, or like that is something that is a big concern of mine.
And we
Thank
can
you.
work with the engineers and city engineering, maybe some traffic calming, speed hump, that type of thing that allows pedestrian access and slows cars down at that point.
Yeah, however the design, it's definitely of concern. Again, not necessarily when it's a hockey thing, but when it's the other community events that are going on there.
Okay. Other feedback? Commissioner Wood?
So I guess I do have one question that you might be able to answer, and it kind of ties into the design. Is there a reason, like it seems like we're adding an addition and making that entrance look nice, but the one that actually faces towards the public the most is still dated looking? I mean, like she said, it looks like a warehouse. Was there any thought into just doing something for the entire building to make it more modern, or was that?
What we were doing was following through with similar materials. I mean, the large addition will be a kind of a pre-engineered metal structure over the rink. The front locker room, the existing is kind of a combination of metal panels that are kind of in this color range and a kind of dark split-face concrete block, and then with some accent of kind of a gray. What we are proposing up front is switching, because we will never get this to match exactly to the existing. So we were proposing kind of a higher grade white on the front, which is mostly hidden by the berm, but that was going to be all masonry with working in some of the banding. So it was kind of a couple things. One is cost, just trying to keep the cost down for this kind of nonprofit situation, but also bringing in, there's the durability on the inside of having kind of a masonry construction that's also acting as a bearing wall, but then doing a few things on the outside that we're trying to doctor up. For our final review, we can bring in renderings that are a little further along than what we have right now that will help explain that. But we were switching up the front color. Again, it would, continue with some of the banding through, but it would predominantly be this. And then same on the east side, we were introducing this as a juncture between the two of them, so we don't have new block that was trying to match, but it'll never match because the other is 20-some years old. And so we were introducing, this product to help that in. But we can also look at some other things on that front, the Verona Road side of the building as well.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Lytle, and then myself.
Thank you. I don't think I have much more to add beyond the comments already made. I think it's important for us to remember that this is a nonprofit group getting the next phase of the ice arena going, which I think is definitely a benefit to our city. But I agree with the comments that here's an opportunity to update in hopefully a cost-effective way, the facade of the building that faces Verona Avenue, and if we can encourage the the project to consider that in the additional items they're adding, I think that would be serve everybody's best interests.
Okay, calling on myself, I had two questions for staff and then a comment. At some point, is city staff going to review the kind of, whether it's the Jesse, the traffic engineer, but like look at the drop-off stuff? I mainly ask because of some of the issues that have been happening at some of the elementary schools where the drop-off is maybe not as efficient as it could be, and we kind of get cars stacking up. And I'm just wondering if at some point we're going to look at it and make sure it's going to be sufficient. Mr. Sayre?
Yeah, we can have Jess look at it if need be. I mean, I think initially the volume is the difference here of just if you have, you know, you don't have 300, 400 kids getting out, you've got, I don't know what a hockey team is, but
Probably
less than
not
100, I know that. I don't know what a hockey team is, but it's probably, you know, say about 50 at the most, I'm not sure. So, I mean, from that standpoint, you know, we've looked at that too. That was one thing we discussed today, actually, on it of, there's currently out there's a turnaround area. That's actually going to stay, so you can still have the ability to drop the person at the door and then kind of have that first turnaround. And, you know, they've got the second kind of entrance in the back here. People still can kind of turn around in that hammerhead area if they needed to, or, you know, possibly park down there as well too. You know, we can kind of run it by Jess, but I think this part with this one too, it's pretty self-contained, and that's part of kind of why we've got additional options if it really went south. I mean, special events, if it's a large special event, I mean, those you can't plan for those because it's impossible. But yeah, we can have Jess give it a quick look at it, but I don't anticipate any issues. As we've looked at it from staff level, that we've kind of talked about traffic and flow, and it hasn't risen to that level of what we've seen with some of the school situations around town.
Yeah, no, and that totally makes sense. I just, from some of the issues we've dealt with the elementary schools, it kind of makes me paranoid. And it's, once it's built, it's very hard to change it. And then I guess my second one is, at some point, would we want to consider putting a gate where that kind of path crosses the Military Ridge State Trail?
Maybe. I think that comes down to, you know, how often does it get used? Does it become a problem? You know, we, quite honestly, employees here at City Hall use that during large elections, and it wasn't so much yesterday, but most likely in the fall, that's where all the employees will park up there, and we'll actually head out that way to kind of avoid the crowds here. So we do use it as the staff. You know, obviously it gets used by our Parks Department as well to kind of an easy, convenient way to cut through. We've loosely talked about that as staff of, you know, if people kind of start using that, we might have to look at what options we have out there. I think that for us, it's more of a wait and see. I don't know if we do a gate per se. We like to use the kind of temporary barriers because we can easily move those around and they're cost effective. But that was more of a, we've talked about it, but our approach was going to be, let's wait and see if we have a problem here. If we have a problem, we'll address it at that point. It's simple to address.
And I can totally see, like, for example, on Election Day, if you want to leave the parking spots for voters, I think that's really good. So I could see, yeah, I mean, maybe temporary barricades are the best way to handle it, but just want to bring it up. And then my one comment is that I just hope when the landscaping plan gets done that there's a aggressive screening kind of on the south part of the parking lot that abuts the Military Ridge Trail. There's a few other spots on the Military Ridge Trail where you can see the lights shining very brightly through the trees, and I would wish there was better screening on that one specific building I'm thinking of, but I would like to see, evergreens or just some strong kind of tree barrier. But overall, I think this is like really good, and I'm excited to see it, and I hope it keeps moving forward. Commissioner Tucker-Long.
Speaking of the path crossing there, would it be possible to put like an underpass for the trail there and actually use the parking lot for overflow from the hockey arena so we wouldn't need as many spots along the side of the building there? Considering that's already paved.
Mr. Sayre?
Underpass for the bike trail?
Yeah, so the Military Ridge Trail would like go under the driveway between the ice arena and that parking lot by the white shelter there.
Got it. Yeah, sure, it's always possible, but it's who's going to pay for it, and you're probably looking at a similar structure of probably what we have out by Wildcat Lane with the new high school. And I don't know the exact price tag on that, but that was probably pushing $500,000 to $1 million. So
the underpass?
It's all concrete. It's actually concrete structures they set in place. They're very, very expensive. So yes, it's always possible. I don't think it's going to be, from a cost level standpoint, probably practical.
Okay.
Other thoughts from the Plan Commission? Seeing no further discussion, Ms. Holt, did we provide adequate feedback?
Yes, thank you.
Great. With that, we'll move on to item 10, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the initial review to construct a 3-story, 57-unit apartment building located on Lot 2 on Prairie Oaks Drive. Ms. Holt.
So the property is highlighted in yellow, and the applicant owns the property to the east too, which are the apartment buildings there. In March of 2021, a different applicant was approved for 2 apartment buildings with a total of 48 apartment units. They proposed a mix of approximately 8 studios, 24 one-bedrooms, and 16 two-bedrooms. The property was rezoned as part of that approval from suburban office to urban residential. Exemptions were granted for the height of the building to be 40 feet tall for the elevator shaft, and a front setback of 17 feet was granted. The previous approval, the buildings looked like this, which were navy and gray, and they were 2 stories with the elevator shaft in this one and another one. This is a different applicant who's sitting over my shoulder. Is here for an initial review to get feedback from the Plan Commission on their proposal. The applicant will create one access point from Prairie Oaks Drive, which will help the existing properties to the east of this property. This design will also benefit the fire department, as they do not have a way to back out of the current drive aisle for the property or the apartment building, so they kind of go backwards through it. This would create a loop for them to get back onto Prairie Oaks Drive. The applicant does not meet the front yard setback of 20 feet, but is proposing 17 feet. The previous plan was granted with that exemption, and so one of the questions for comments would be whether this would be granted or acceptable to grant again. The applicant is proposing a total of 86 parking stalls to include 66 underground spaces and 20 surface parking spaces. Staff has no concern with the parking requirements. The electrical vehicles charging stations are shown on this slide, and the bicycle parking, which we also do not have concerns with. Staff recommends the applicant consider extending the sidewalks from the first floor patios to Prairie Oaks Drive, similar to across the street, the Lincoln Street Apartments, allowing people to use on-street parking if that is of interest to the tenant. The applicant is proposing 12 one-bedrooms, 15 one-bedroom with a den, 23 two-bedrooms plus a den, and 7 three-bedrooms for a total of 57 units. There are specific residential use standards that must be met, and staff gave a general review of those in the staff report to assist the applicant. Since this is an initial review, we don't have any recommendations in this. A building rendering was included in the application and is shown here. The proposal is for a 3-story building with a brick and flat roof. To the right is a person at grade, and to the left is a terrace or retaining walls to show the elevation differences. Staff is supportive of the building design, and the height as the flat roof minimizes the overall building height, which meets the maximum height requirements. So with that, staff recommends the Plan Commission review the submitted materials and provide feedback to the applicant to ensure the following questions are answered. Will a 3-story building be supported on this property? If a 3-story building is not supported, would a 2-story pitched roof building with dormers be supported? And are there any concerns with reducing the front setback to 17 feet? And the applicant, again, is over my shoulder if you have questions.
All right. Comments or questions from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Wood.
So for the 17 feet, I don't see much of an issue with it. I'm assuming that's just a setback from how far it is from the street. Okay. I guess my bigger concern is whether or not the parking is sufficient with that many one-bedrooms. I lived in an apartment building similar to this, and I can say that parking was a headache. And I do think also extending those sidewalks on the first floor is super helpful to get people, you know, if there is shorter parking, to get people to use the street instead on those first floors.
Ms. Holt, do you want to weigh in on the number of parking stalls, or is that too early in the process?
They meet the underground parking requirement of one parking stall per unit, which is the requirement, but then you have other requirements, and off the top of my head, I can't remember. But I believe I think it's 1.5 parking stalls per unit. So what is it, 56 units, 86 parking spaces, I think it was.
They're
So,
right at 1.5.
yeah. I mean, they just meet the requirement, but again, you're getting back into the discussion previously about visitor parking and things like that, too.
Gotcha. Thank you. That was helpful. Other feedback from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Lytle.
At first glance, the bulk of the building and the layout is a lot less appealing to me than the previous proposal. I see we're only really up 9 units. I'll ask staff to remind me for the approval process for this. Would there need to be a public hearing or any notice to adjacent landowners about this project?
Mr. Sayre?
I think we're treating this as be a PIP potentially, so it was a plan development last time. You potentially still have that exemption that was granted as part of that plan development, so this would be a precise implementation plan. So yes, as part of that, there would be a public hearing.
Okay. I know there's a lot of projects in various stages of development in this area. I think the size of the building as you're driving by from the south is going to be pretty imposing. For the backyard of the Goddard School, I think you're not very far away from 3 stories of, building there. I do think to the north, probably the neighbors in residential, single family to the north are only going to see one of those stories, at least based on that initial view. I can't say that I wouldn't find myself voting for this, but it's, from my perspective, a step down from the previous configuration that was proposed.
Other thoughts from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Tucker-Long, and then myself.
Are we discussing all aspects of things right now? Okay. In that case, I have a couple of comments then. I think the previous building design made the building look smaller, whereas the more consistent two-toned look that we're getting now makes the building look bigger than it is. The last one had 3 different colors in it, which broke up that sort of like long, imposing look of the building. And so I think some of my reluctance over this is just because it looks so much bigger, even though it's probably not actually that much bigger. I don't see any green space or any place for the residents to be outside in this plan at all. Everything's paved or a building. I do appreciate that they have balconies, but it doesn't look like everyone will have a balcony. I do appreciate that there's some 3 bedrooms. I very much appreciate that that's been added. But yeah, I'm a little concerned about how close it is to the school and also how big it would be by, single-family residential. We need more of a transition. Are there any other 3-story buildings in this direct area? I was trying to remember. It's hard to tell looking at Google Maps.
Well, it depends on vicinity, but you have, I believe, Knoll Manor, which is east of here. I think that's 3 stories. You have, obviously, we're talking about Monk's redevelopment as well, so that one is not approved, but it's out there. Beyond that, no. The rest of these are kind of a 2-story Prairie style. And I know you got a couple more comments. One thing to point out is the developer has told us, since they own kind of everything east of here as well, this would be, there are amenities actually inside that apartment kind of area to the southeast of this, those amenities would be available to these people as well too, just to let you guys know that.
When you say to the southeast of there, is that across Prairie Oaks Drive?
Correct. So it would be kind of traversing kind of southeast. I'm just pulling up the map. Or actually, I have a map. That would help. So you have there's the pool and kind of the clubhouse area there. So this would be southeast to that kind of common area for this kind of those units in that area.
Sure. I mean, it's nice they can use the pool there and stuff, but I don't really see anyone trekking that far just to like grill some burgers or something for dinner, you know, or, you know, to have a little picnic outside or something. So I would still like to see some outdoor stuff, maybe a playground for the kids or something, because not a lot of access to parks from there without crossing some pretty busy drives.
Okay. Then I will call on myself. I guess my comments are similar on the building height to Commissioner Lytle's in the sense I'm not saying I'm not saying I'm necessarily 100% opposed right now. I did like the two-story design just because I felt like it fit in a little bit better with the neighborhood. I would definitely be open to a two-story pitch roof building with the dormers. I think that might be a little bit better. And I agree with the comment regarding extending the sidewalk for the separate entrances. And that might help, you know, get people with on-street parking as well. And then I just had a general question for staff. Back on the map, there is that city park north of there. Would it or would it not be realistic to somehow have a connection from this property to that park? Because it would have to cross.
Anything's always possible. I'm not sure what the grade is in that location. Then you get into that stormwater pond as well. So I mean, it's always possible, but it's a matter of it's going to be a little tricky. I mean, you do have the sidewalk along Prairie Oaks that would kind of get you up to obviously where that path comes in. I just know the grades as you head north, even on this property in the yellow, they get pretty severe pretty quickly. It's very steep. And I'm not sure what they are off the backside of those existing townhomes. I think it's pretty steep there, if I'm not mistaken. So it's always possible, but realistically, it's going to be probably very tough.
Gotcha. No, that was just me, like, with not a well-thought-out idea, but just like, oh, well, there's green space north of there. But, yeah, if people have to walk around the block, it's not as useful. Other thoughts from the Plan Commission? Alder Posey.
I'll just reiterate a little bit of that. I really liked the previous design. It was a real easy, like, yes for me on that one. So I don't know if Commissioner Tucker Long's thoughts that just appears so much bigger, or if it actually is that much bigger with just that third story added across versus just having a small piece for the elevator shaft. But I felt like the previous design really fit into that landscape there, and was a good use of that property. I'm okay with doing the 17-foot setback. I don't have a problem with that. I think my only concern with encouraging on-street parking would be if there are driveways across the street there. I'm not sure where that would line up, but if that would be a concern with kind of traffic and getting a little congested if there were cars lined up along the road. But otherwise, I'd be okay with it. And yes, and I would be okay with dormered second story. Again, it might just be a design versus, you know, how it appears versus how it actually is. So I'd be open to other design options. But I think it's a good, either way, it's a good use of a piece of property that I know appears really challenging. So I think it's a good use for that property.
Commissioner Tucker Long.
Another thing you might consider is talking to the Goddard School and see if you could work out an agreement for overnight parking in their lot as long as people are out by a certain time. Maybe they wouldn't go for that since they probably start early, but they're not that far down, and that would get cars off the street but still give parking.
Other thoughts from the Plan Commission? Seeing no further discussion, Ms. Holt, did we cover all the feedback?
Maybe just a couple, I know it's not supposed to be question and answer, but can I, just a couple quick comments?
All right, since
Thank
there's
you.
no one else in the room.
I'm John Mann, by the way. It's nice to meet all of you. There's a 3-story building right across the street here from the fire department with a flat roof. It has, yeah, I'm sorry. There's a 3-story building with a flat roof right across the street from your facility here, right closer to the fire department. Next time you're out here, take a look at that. I don't think it looks very tall to me. I mean, it has a very low feel to me. So anyways, that's a really good example of what this building would be very similar to. We have extremely large balconies and patios on this design, so that's just another quick comment. They're much bigger than normal. The balconies in the second and the third floor are probably 3 times bigger than a typical apartment building. So there's a lot of outdoor space there. As far as the color scheme goes, you know, like you just said, the 90 apartments that are next to it are ours, and so the idea was to use that same red brick and sort of make it part of that scheme. So that's why the red brick color scheme was used, was to more match the existing building. So,
Great.
anyways, those are my
Thanks.
quick little observations.
All right. With that, we will move on to, lost my place. Item 11, which is zoning text amendments to modify sections of the zoning ordinance related to chickens, landscaping, lot coverage, outdoor dining, recreation, and vehicle equipment storage, and setbacks to the SI and NO zoning districts, as well as pavement. Before we get into the public hearing, can we get a brief overview, Mr. Sayer?
Thank you. So these are zoning text amendments for all the items that you just listed off. When we kind of get into, we've kind of grouped those all into one public hearing, which was probably smart. And then we'll take each item individually as we kind of go through this. But this does require a public hearing before the Plan Commission, and this is a recommendation for the Common Council.
I will move that we open the public hearing on the zoning text amendments. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Tucker-Long. All those in favor of opening the public hearing on these topics, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? And we are now in the public hearing at 7:43 PM. Yeah. Seeing nobody approaching the microphone, a motion to close the public hearing would be in order. Motion by Commissioner Lytle, is there a second? Second by Commissioner Wood. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? And the public hearing is closed at 7:44 PM. Mr. Sayer.
Okay, first item up is going to be zoning text amendments related to chickens. So, Catherine, jump in if I miss anything here. So this is an item that we've talked about a couple of times. We missed this as part of the zoning ordinance rewrite. So we are putting most of the language back in. We are making some modifications that we discussed last time. You know, one of the modifications is this would now be permitted in all zoning districts. As part of that, it would be people would be allowed to have up to 4 female chickens on their property. If the property is less than 1 acre in size, that's a change again of just, we're starting to call out the acreage based upon some comments we had from the public last time. And then the second part of that is if the property is more than 1 acre inside, they can have no more than 8 female chickens. So they can have up to 8 chickens if it's greater than 1 acre, and if it's less than an acre, they can have 4 chickens. So trying to get to the point of if you have a larger property, you can have some additional chickens as part of this. I think for the most part, those are the changes that we made to that. As part of this, I made this comment last time, is, you know, we are going to look at the licensing requirement. This is not something that's under the Plan Commission authority, but we want to look at the licensing requirement. Quite honestly, people aren't getting licenses, and it's not worth even the paper that we print those forms on if people aren't going to get them. And we don't take a heavy-handed enforcement on this. I mean, like with most things, we operate on a complaint basis, so we're not out looking for chickens. So, you know, we're going to take a look at that as well, too, in the near future if these changes go through. We did go through this finding of facts that we do for all zoning text amendments, and we believe it meets the requirements for that. So staff recommends, the potential recommendation is to recommend the common council approve the zoning text amendment for section 13-1-05, parens M as in Matthew, accessory uses to permit keeping and raising of chickens in all zoning districts, and recommend the common council approve the zoning text amendment for sections 13-1-132, parens D, specific accessory use standards for the keeping and raising of chickens. And we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions, comments, or motions on this item? Commissioner Lytle.
I think I was absent last month when we kind of teed up these changes. Are we aware of, do we know that there are non-residential locations in the city of Verona where people have expressed an interest in keeping chickens?
Mr. Sarah?
Yes, we had Alderperson Kimmett come here, and she also owns, obviously, the bookstore in downtown, and she has expressed an interest in doing that.
And so, not seeing a reason to limit it, does that give us a reason to extend it to all all zoning districts? Like if there was a factory in the industrial park that wanted to keep chickens, whether or not that's good for the chickens' health and well-being, we just are kind of following the simplest approach as far as just having it apply to all zoning districts.
Mr. Sarah?
I think that was kind of the direction staff was given, so yes.
Thanks, just needed that clarification.
Questions, comments, or motions? Commissioner Tucker-Long.
I have a question for staff. I thought in the original wording, we mentioned that they have to get the Wisconsin license to have chickens, or register with the Wisconsin registry, and I don't see that wording in here anymore. Do we want to put that back?
Mr. Sarah, maybe, or Ms. Holt, clarification? Or whoever?
I can do it.
Okay.
The current chicken license has that requirement in it, explicitly stated when you apply for that. So that was always in the public safety aspect of it versus the zoning portion of it.
So it's still there.
So it's still there until something changes, as Mr. Sayer mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, if we're getting rid of the licensing, then that wouldn't be there, right?
correct.
So what I'm wondering is if we need it here.
You want to keep zoning and licensing as separate as you can.
Okay.
So I mean, ultimately, if DAC I think it's DAC maybe it changed again. If whoever from the state is requiring that, regardless of what we have in their ordinance, the people should technically, be getting that too.
Okay.
But I think if we split that, there was a reason why we split that years ago. I'm guessing it came from legal counsel, but I'd say we keep it separate just because I know it gets very funky if you start putting licensing and kind of crossing that into each other. It can become challenging legally.
I'm wondering, the reason I bring it up is because a lot of people I've encountered who've gotten backyard chickens have just checked our zoning ordinances and aren't aware of other requirements. And so I'm wondering if we just mention something like you need to obtain and maintain any applicable licensing or something like that. So we're not specifically saying what licensing they have to get, but just some sort of cue to let them know they need to find out what licensing they need.
Mr. Sarah?
Not to be difficult in my response, but if they're already not following the rules already, I don't know.
Sure.
If we're trying to take a hands-off approach and trying to stay out of this as much as we can, I guess my opinion as staff is, if we're going to look at eliminating the licensing process and kind of opening this up, they need to go look at it themselves. I mean, if we're trying to just allow this with general parameters behind it, my feeling is, we can only do so much, and if there's really no enforcement mechanism besides encouraging people to do it,
Sure.
we're not chicken experts by any means here either. But my feeling is, if we're trying to go more laissez-faire and just let it be, and here's some general parameters, I think, I mean, I don't know what the state does if you don't get it. I have no idea what the consequences are, but my feeling is if we're trying to keep our hands off of it, I'd prefer to just keep our hands off and try to keep as general as we can of this is what you can and can't do. And,
Sure.
it's like with anything, anytime you do anything, is like you should check and make sure you get all your permits and licenses and,
Do we talk about the dog licensing in zoning?
no.
Okay. Okay. Maybe then we just need to, whenever we send out the dog licensing notifications, like with the water bills, maybe chicken licensing info goes out then too?
But we're probably going to do away with the licensing requirement as a city.
But maybe we could just mention that they have to have the Wisconsin State Ag Department license.
I'll defer to Mayor Diaz on that. Like I said, I'm not trying to be difficult here, but we've had something in place, and we know we have a very significant number of people that we know are violating it right now. And that's kind of why I'm pushing back of like, you can put it what you want in there, but we have a process to get a license, and
Sure.
clearly I have someone I can see right from my house who doesn't have one. So I mean, it's like, that's kind of why it's.
But the Wisconsin registry isn't just like a licensing, it's for tracking like the avian flu and stuff. And since we've had multiple outbreaks in the county now, it's getting to be a bigger deal of tracking backyard chickens.
I mean, if I may, I think it could be useful to put something up on the city website, because I kind of get your point about like, if people look it up, they don't expect to have instructions in two places. So they look it up in zoning and said, oh, this is what I have to do, and I'm done. And then they don't go and look for anything else. On the other hand, is, someone who does compliance stuff and other things, having two locations where you have to maintain both of them is a recipe for things getting out of sync. So I think it might be useful maybe to put it on the city website, kind of like, so you want to have backyard chickens, and then we can be like, here's the zoning, here are the state rules, and then at least, because I feel like people just are going to like City of Verona chickens, and in theory, if it's optimized, it'll just come up, and then people will just be able to see on the website, and we can say we did our due diligence, and we told people, because the avian flu thing, and just other best practices, I think, point taken. Other questions, comments, or motions on this one? Commissioner Lytle.
I'll be the chicken guy. I'll make a motion that we recommend the Common Council approve the zoning text amendment for Section 13-1-105M, accessory uses to permit keeping and raising of chickens in all zoning districts, and recommend the Common Council approve the zoning text amendment for Section 13-1-132D, specific accessory use standards for keeping and raising chickens.
Motion by Commissioner Lytle. Is there a second? Nope. Second by Commissioner Wood. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on this motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of recommending to the Common Council to approve the zoning text amendments as presented related to chickens, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. We'll move on to 11B, which is a discussion and possible action regarding zoning text amendments related to landscaping.
Oops, sorry. Next one up is we had another miss when we wrote the zoning ordinance, so we are looking at amending 13-153. This would require landscaping and green spaces. That was an item that we missed as part of the rewrite. This would require ornamental and large shade trees shall be required for all green space areas as required by the Plan Commission, and the Plan Commission may also approve different design solutions, which is designed by a registered landscape architect. So pretty much if you have a green space on there, you need to put some trees into there, and we'd have discretion on kind of how many and location and whatnot. So staff went through the findings of facts for this, and we believe it meets the requirements, and we recommend that the Plan Commission recommend the Common Council approve the zoning text amendment for 13-1-153 relating to landscape standards to add tree plantings in green space areas.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions, comments, or motions on this one? Commissioner Tucker Long.
I'm wondering if it would be appropriate for us to mention here that native plantings are preferred.
Mr. Sarah?
We do already have a requirement that 75% of all landscaping needs to be native. So I don't think we need to mention it because they're going to have to meet that throughout the whole plan.
Perfect.
Alder Posey.
Make a motion to recommend the Common Council approve the zoning text amendment for Section 13-1-153, landscape standards to add tree plantings in the green space area.
Motion by Alder Posey. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Wood. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor of recommending to the Common Council to approve the zoning text amendment for Section 13-1-153, landscape standards to add tree plantings in the green space area, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Next, we'll move on to 11C, which is a zoning text amendment relating to lot coverage. Mr. Sayer.
Lot coverage, this was talked about at the last Plan Commission meeting, so we have drafted some changes to address the issues that our new ordinance has kind of created. So the proposed changes would change the definition of lot coverage. That new definition would be any portion of a lot when viewed from above is covered by impervious surface, but not including green roofs, solar, and stormwater facilities. And then we also would propose making changes to the table that has the lot coverage requirements in it. And those changes would include, instead of a 40% coverage for NR, it'd be 50%. It'd be the same for MR, which instead of 40, it'd be 50%. Urban residential, instead of 50, it'd be 75%. Suburban commercial, instead of 40, would be 80. Central commercial would stay the same at 100%. Neighborhood office and suburban office would go from 40 to 80%. Suburban industrial would go from 60 to 80%. Urban industrial would go from 70 to 90%, and public institutional would go from 40 to 80%. Once again, this has created development issues across the city that we're trying to address as part of this. But I think what we have here is consistent with what we talked about at the last meeting, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Wood.
I just want to refresh my brain that the percentages, like the 50%, would mean that 50% can be impervious and 50% can't.
Correct. So it's a maximum lot coverage. So this is how much can be covered by, which is covered by impervious surface. So anything that's basically pavement, anything that doesn't drain into the dirt, and that does exclude though green roofs, solar panels, and then stormwater facilities.
Perfect. Thank you.
Other questions, comments, or motions? Commissioner Lytle.
One more request to be brought up to speed. I know there was a series of discussions about stormwater facilities and trying to thread the needle to give credit for, or not count stormwater facilities, but also seek out some kind of amenities that make them amenities. And where did we settle on that? I was having trouble figuring out what was decided or what the consensus was.
Mr. Sayer?
That needle we attempted to thread, and I'm not a knitter or sewer, but it was very difficult to thread that needle without creating more confusion kind of into what we'd be looking at doing. So we looked at that, and it got it wasn't getting pretty. It was getting very convoluted, where we ended up having a definition where we were carving out so many exemptions out of the definition that it just was, I don't want to say wrecking the definition, but it was defeating the purpose of trying to define it. And then, in essence, we were building regulations in a definition, which is just poor policy. So yeah, we didn't succeed in doing that well. So we kind of dropped it because it just got worse, we thought. So.
Got it. Then I guess in the interest of moving things along, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend the Common Council approve the zoning text amendment for Section 13-1-54 definitions L to modify the current language, and paired with that, recommend the Common Council approve the zoning text amendment for Section 13-1-101 bulk and dimensional standards to modify the percentages for lot coverage in each zoning district.
Motion by Commissioner Lytle. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Posey. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Oh, Commissioner Tucker-Long.
For urban residential, is this something where we like accidentally dropped it down to 50, or has it always been 50 and now we're bumping it up to 75? And I just ask because if that's, I mean, urban residential would be like multifamily, right? And I'm just wondering if that seems like an awful lot of lot coverage, considering it likely bumps up to, you know, other residential areas.
Mr. Sayre?
Yeah, I mean, it did bump. I'm looking at the chart actually in front of me right now. We were trying to kind of get that to a number where it could potentially work with just the surface parking as well. You know, 50 we thought was probably too low. We thought 75, then 25% of the site would be green space, open space. We thought that seemed, you know, appropriate just because that's the multifamily district.
I'm just thinking if we're counting stormwater retention, I mean, with a big parking lot and everything, I guess I don't want to raise the percentage too high so that we stop encouraging places to do underground parking to try to solve the problem. Because, you know, the more we pave, and once you've got a parking lot there, it's not going away, you know, and rainwater is becoming more and more of an issue.
Yeah, we still have the 1-to-1 requirement of underground parking, so we're pretty set in that. But I know I see your point of just, you know, Catherine. I know we talked a bunch about this. I don't know if you have any thoughts on where we landed at 75 versus somewhere in between 50 and 75.
I guess one thought is this is the maximum lot coverage. So behind the scenes, staff can always say, oh, where's your green space or your playground and things like that too, because it is the maximum they can do. They can always do under that threshold, but I mean, some of the sites we do, I know, but some of the sites we do constrain it a little more. A lot of this discussions also involved infill. So some of the other projects that we've already approved may not have met some of this when we were looking at other sites in the city of how that would play out, especially if you didn't have a regional pond nearby, because there were some advantages to the percentages.
Yeah, you do run a higher risk of having some more challenges with those. I think that's fair. I don't know where that number probably falls. I mean, it's probably someplace in between 50 and 75. I mean, I don't think I'd go too much lower than 75, just because that is your multifamily district, and if you're trying to have more, you know, dense development, you're going to potentially have more building kind of on that property, which if that's kind of the intent versus some of the apartment buildings years ago, obviously, you had just look at Berkeley Court in that area. I mean, that's kind of what you don't want to see from a development standpoint. But yeah, I mean, if you wanted to tweak that slightly, I think you could slightly. Like I said, I wouldn't go too far on that one, though.
Yeah, I guess my concern is just that, you know, we are seeing a lot more urban residential development in town. And I want to make sure we're not just creating giant seas of concrete and there's no, you know, there's no green space to enjoy. The only green space is the water retention areas, and that's it, you know. Because that's not going to have good longevity as far as like keeping those areas nice.
I guess I have a question for staff. Like with the stormwater facilities, I know we don't necessarily have a requirement in regards to like benches or equipment or anything like that, but like, is that something we want to look at where if we are going to start crediting people for this, we want to like have a requirement for a path or a requirement for benches or some other equipment to kind of make it like a real public area and not just utility infrastructure?
Well, I'll kind of look at Carlo here a little bit too, but I mean, not all ponds are kind of created the same. So I mean, you know, you look at the one that we have down at Arrowhead for that project. You know, they're putting in a path there. You know, we don't need that from a maintenance standpoint. I mean, well, we're going to use that as part of a maintenance standpoint, but we don't per se need a path around there. We have added them in some situations, but some of these ponds that are smaller, it's probably not appropriate, obviously, if the pond is just a rinky-dink no offense, Carl, like a rain garden or something small that isn't really holding much water, and it's just kind of I think in some situations you can look at that, but I don't know if I don't think it's applicable kind of in all of them. The regional ponds, I think, are the big ones, especially, probably up for debate.
Okay. And then I guess my one comment is, yeah, I do think we want what Commissioner Tucker Long said about, keeping the areas nice over time, I think is really important. But I guess I wouldn't want to give up the potential for some of the density either, just because if hopefully at some point we'll be supporting some bus routes in the city and potentially doing some infill. And I would just worry if the percent was set low, we would potentially miss out on some projects too, so I think, I don't know, it's a tough one, but I do think it shows how important it is who's on Plan Commission and who's on the council, because ultimately this body and the council has discretion. So if something looks too concrete, it can be turned down in a lot of cases. But anyways, that's my thoughts on it. Other questions? Alder Posey.
Is that something that can be or is already even addressed in, I know we're talking about reviewing kind of master plan and everything else, what percentage of, our city we're willing to have as urban residential and therefore having paved over?
Mr. Sayre?
So as part of the comp plan, the goal is you set up a future land use map where you designate this is where we want multifamily, this is where we want single family, commercial, et cetera. So when that's rewritten, when the census data comes out, because I don't think it's out yet, when that data comes out, then that process will get moving pretty quickly. But yes, the goal is you have a future land use map that identifies the areas that are probably greenfield right now, and you probably would also identify potential redevelopment areas as well too, which could include obviously mixed use and maybe a higher and better use of the property. But that will have it in there when that gets done, because we are lacking right now a clear, concise future land use map from a plan that was previously put together.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lytle.
Yeah, I think, Commissioner Tucker Long does a good job of, encouraging us to minimize the impervious surface wherever we can, particularly with urban residential and the 3- and 4-story proposals that come in front of us. I like to have a little more flexibility with lot coverage, so people have less opportunity to claim, well, I have to make this project 4 stories or it's not going to make sense economically. Now, they're going to tell us that no matter what, but if we have give them a little more to work with in terms of lot coverage, then I feel like we have a stronger case to make that, no, you don't need to make this however many stories.
Commissioner Tucker Long.
Just to go along with what Commissioner Lytle was saying, to go along with that, they do have flexibility because solar panels don't count as impervious surface. So if they just put solar panels on their roof, they can probably pave the whole rest of their property. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're already giving them quite a bit of flexibility and saying that solar panels don't count, green roofs don't count, And so I guess, to me, 75% just seems a little bit high, considering we're giving them options as ways to negate what they're already paving.
Questions, comments, or motions? There? Was there? Second, okay. I'm sorry, I thought that was the I'm confused. Okay. Questions or comments on the motion? Commissioner Tucker Long.
So I'd like to see the number be less than 75 for right now, since I feel like a quarter jump is a really big percentage. So I'm going to be voting no on the motion, and I'm wondering if other people agree with it. Maybe we could approve it, but with a lower percentage, like maybe we can bump up to 60%, which is already a 10% increase. And am I correct that we can always grant an exemption if there's a neat property that for some reason doesn't fit the requirement?
Mr. Sayre?
You could. I mean, the goal obviously with the ordinance was to try to get us away from that, but yes, you could potentially grant an exemption.
Alder Posey.
kind of a procedural question. Would this be an option to, would we have to vote no and then potentially table it so we could look into it further and talk about it? I know, so that we could get more specific about what 75 looks like versus 60 versus, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be at the kind of the discretion of the planning commission, although, Mr. Sayer, are we on a timeline for this?
That would be.
Yeah, there's other projects here that are going to be hit by this. I mean, ultimately, if the concern was just for that one, I mean, you could just say, let's keep it at 50, staff keep looking at it. Everything else, let's keep that moving along forward here, but, you know, let's drop that back down to 50. To your point, come back, show us some examples, give us some ideas, and we'll address that UR district in the coming months. So you could do that as well, too. Then that would keep it moving from the people I know I've heard from. I haven't heard from anyone in the UR district, but other districts, oh yeah, we've heard from it.
Okay, but we could evaluate the UR district separate and pull that out.
I think that's
and
fair.
go forward with everything else would be an option for us.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable to keep the rest going, yes.
Okay.
So if someone wanted to make a motion to amend the motion, they could. Commissioner Tucker-Long.
I have a quick question. Looking at the Lot 2 Prairie Oaks Drive initial review that we just looked at, I'm trying to figure out what page. It's on page 5 of the initial plan. It's figure 4. I think this was 74% coverage. Is that right? So that could be something to take a look at to get a feel for what 74% coverage, so not, I mean, very close to the maximum that we're talking about, would look like. And it's not a lot of green space.
You said Prairie Oaks or Prairie Heights?
It says Lot 2 Prairie Oaks Drive
Okay.
initial review is at the top of the page. It's page, I think, 151 of the packet.
Yeah. That one I think was at 50% for lot coverage, if I'm
I
not
thought they
mistaken.
were
The three-story
over.
building?
Yeah.
Huh.
Because I'm looking at, that's page, here's my iPad. I got page 150. There's a table on there that we put together, and it says 50% from a,
I think that was for the previous building.
no. I'm pretty sure it's this one.
Okay.
Catherine?
Okay, so yeah, so that's only 50% coverage, so we're talking about even a quarter more being covered.
Motion before the body. Questions, comments, or motions on the motion? Commissioner Tucker-Long.
I guess I have a procedural question. At this point, if I make a motion to amend the motion, can I make a motion to amend just that one number in the motion?
Right, so yeah, you would move that basically the urban residential gets set to whatever you'd want it to be set at, and then it could be seconded or not seconded, and then it would be voted on, and then we'd go back to the original motion, and if the amendment passed, it would be set at what the amendment said. If it didn't pass, it would go back to 75%.
Okay. And do we have any data right now about how many apartment buildings in town are over, or how many urban residential properties are over 50% lot coverage currently?
Mr. Sayer?
No, we don't have that.
Okay.
We didn't prepare that for tonight, no.
Yeah,
sorry.
no worries. I just in case somehow you knew. You always have all these numbers, you know.
I'm sure some of them are, and we could probably all guess which ones they are, but
Sure.
yeah, I don't know off the top of my head,
Okay.
approximately.
Sounds good. Well, then, I would like to move that we amend the movement on the table for the urban residential lot coverage number to be increased to 60% instead of 75%.
Motion by Commissioner Tucker-Long. Is there a second? Not seeing a second? So I'm going to say the motion fails then. We are back to the original motion. Alder Posey.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion to remove the urban residential from the original motion I don't know how I'm going to word this, so if you want me to reword it, but to remove urban residential so that we can continue evaluating it and determine what would be a good number moving forward for the percentage of lot coverage.
Yeah, I
So-
think that makes sense to me, Mr. Sayer. It would basically just strike it from the table, and it would stay at its current.
No, it would not strike it from the table. It would stay in the current.
I mean, strike it
Right.
from the change.
Yes, it would stay at
So, no, I'm
50%.
not proposing
Yes.
getting rid of urban residential.
Right.
It would stay at 50% what it is today, and you wouldn't be changing anything for that one only today. Got it.
And with my comment of this is going to be a further discussion, I feel like we need to dive into it further, not that it's done and staying at 50. It's discussion. Do you need me to word all that differently?
No, I think
Okay.
that was clear. Motion by Alder Posey. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Wood. Motion on the motion before the body. Questions or comments on this motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the amendment to remove the urban residential zoning changes from the main motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
And that motion passes. And we are back to the main motion at, which is basically as presented in the packet with the changes to the urban residential being removed. Questions or comments on this motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of recommending to the Common Council to approve the zoning text amendment for Section 13-1-54, definitions L to modify the current language, and recommend to the Common Council to approve the zoning text amendment for Section 13-1-101, bulk and dimensional standards to modify the percentages for lot coverages in each zoning district as amended, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Next, we'll move on to 11D, which is a zoning, discussion and possible action regarding zoning text amendments relating to outdoor dining. Mr. Sayer.
All right, halfway done. So this is another text amendment for the outdoor dining areas. We've talked about this a few times. In essence, as part of the new ordinance, we adopt in language and requirements for outdoor dining, kind of based upon the direction and recent approvals from the Public Safety Committee. We're looking at kind of striking our existing language and just having basically a statement that they be allowed in these kind of commercial areas, but we'd have a statement that says a fence shall be added as a barrier between the outdoor dining area and the pedestrian walkway if alcohol consumption or public safety becomes an issue outside the designated barriers. And that condition is consistent with the most recent one that we actually approved out in Sugar Creek Commons. So just looking to make it consistent kind of with the current practice. We did go through the findings of facts, and we recommend the Planning Commission approve the zoning text amendment related to outdoor dining.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions, comments, or motions on this item? Commissioner Lytle.
Do we feel like there's clarity on what, if alcohol consumption or public safety becomes an issue? I keep it simple wherever possible, but would we get pushback from an operator saying, we were running this place for 12 months and nobody complained, and then we had one weekend where, there were 2 complaints. That's not an issue, that's just an aberration. And I mean, there's no way to completely box this in, but I don't know if, like, from the city attorney standpoint or anything, that this is something that is clear enough for someone to interpret.
We have enough. We also have the licensing power as well, too. Ultimately, have a liquor license, and that's another tool that we have in place. Ideally, it wouldn't get that far of, the big issue is, okay, somebody's having a drink and they walk off, or they're passing alcohol to a minor or something like that. Those are the ones that come to mind, and we, knock on wood, we haven't had issues like that with our current businesses because they run a good business. But if we have a problem in the future, the first step would be, well, the easiest solution is you probably need to put some barriers up, and that would help kind of contain it. Part of the challenge is how it's managed as well, so part of it goes to the management side. But we have enough, and it's not perfect, but we have enough that we try to start gradually, and obviously if all else fails, we could just pull their liquor license as well and go through that process, which we don't want to do. But yeah, there's enough with this one, and I believe when we did this condition last time, I believe the city attorney was in the audience when we did that, because I remember looking out there and he was sitting there. So, like I said, not perfect, but I think we have enough that if there's a problem, we could, we have steps to address it.
Other questions, comments, or motions on this one? Commissioner Tucker-Long.
I just want to clarify. So the zoning ordinance would now be they do not have to have a fence even if they're serving alcohol outside unless it becomes a problem. Because that seems like a pretty big deviation from what we've been doing so far, where every place so far has required a fence.
Yep.
Okay. And is this change coming from the police department, or why are we removing the fences?
Well, with the last one with Sugar Creek Commons, we typically require a 4-foot fence. That one does not have a 4-foot fence. It does have some barriers in that. That's even what the operator wanted as well, too. I mean, that's something that he said that, he wanted something there that, I think he said he didn't want a jail, but he wanted something that, if you're having a drink and oh, this is kind of out of bounds, so I believe he has some planting boxes there, and he has some other kind of decorative features as well. But I think it's coming from we're looking at it as, okay, if we're not going to require the 4-foot wrought iron type fence that we've done in the past, giving that flexibility of, it's not uncommon elsewhere, but having that flexibility of we can be flexible with it. If we're going to be proving, one on West Roan Avenue should be good for everybody else as well, too. So it's trying to keep everyone kind of fairly and consistently as well. And if we're not going to be following what we've done previously, we should then be flexible.
I guess I didn't realize we'd approved something with no fence. I thought it was just that the fence was made out of planting boxes instead of wrought iron.
It's not a fence. It's just kind of some barriers that are there, but it's not a fence. And that ultimately went to public safety, and that's who grants the license for the outdoor premise area as well. That's part of the reason why it went there. But no, it's not a true fence per se.
I guess, what do you mean by a true fence? I mean, does it still prevent people from just wandering out?
There's some gaps in there. You could squeeze through there if you wanted to. I mean, you have to turn on your side and knowingly squeeze through there, but I mean, it's not a fence. It's not what you'd have in your backyard. Mm-hmm. And that's the fences we have in town. They're actually, you have fences that are made out of that versus these are barriers, I'd say.
Other questions, comments, or motions? I'll call on myself real quick and just say, in the interest of keeping things moving along, I will move that we recommend to the Common Council to approve the zoning text amendment for Section 13-1-132, paren M, to remove the existing text and replace with a fence shall be added as a barrier between the outdoor dining area and the pedestrian walkway if alcohol consumption or public safety becomes an issue outside of the designated barriers, and recommend to the Common Council to approve the zoning text amendments to remove language for outdoor dining without alcohol in sections 13-1-132 L, I'm thinking, paren L, 13-1-57 paren M, and 13-1-105 paren M. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Posey. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? I guess I'll briefly speak to the motion. I think this is a big change, but I think, with what happened or what's going forward at the Sugar Creek Commons project, I think this makes it, I guess, more fair for the city. If we just approve one kind of exemption in one area, I mean, it is a really important one. I think it's going to be a key part of our downtown. So, I mean, honestly, if it came to being unfair to them, I would probably still have been in favor of it. But I would rather be fair to the whole city. And there are mechanisms still in place that if a establishment can't be trusted with this ability, or if there are problems, we can yank it back. So I feel pretty comfortable moving forward with this, and then, throw in with the way things with COVID are going, and, I think a lot of people are going to want to dine outside. So I think being flexible and making it possible for more people is is good for the city, and it'll be good for city residents. But those are my thoughts. Alder Posey.
Yeah, I just want to add that we kind of dipped our toe in this water during COVID to allow some of our restaurants to be able to serve outside without that barrier. And we didn't run into too many issues that I'm aware of, or any if I've heard of. So I think, thinking Toot and Kate's downtown, we let them set up the tables out there without fencing. So I think that was just one example of letting kind of our downtown merchants have more opportunity to serve outside safely, as long as they're following kind of the guidelines.
Other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of recommending to the Common Council to approve the zoning text amendments related to outdoor dining as described in the packet, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Next, we'll move on to 11E, which is a discussion and possible action regarding zoning text amendments relating to recreation vehicle and equipment. Mr. Sayer.
All right, two left here. So we have this one for basically campers. So this was brought up by our building inspection department. This was also kind of taken out as part of the rewrite. So as part of this, we have added a definition for recreational vehicles and equipment. It's also been added as a use in the use matrix as well. And then we've added specific standards related to this as well. That one, your recreation vehicles, equipment shall not be located or block easements, right-of-ways, flood areas, etc., sidewalks, vehicles not permanently stored in the front or corner yard areas, or shall not be stored in those front or corner yard areas. And we have examples of kind of what are examples of if it is being stored. It cannot be used for storage as part of that, shall not be permanently connected to the wastewater, sanitary water lines, electricity, etc. They shall be parked and stored a minimum of 10 feet from any property line or right-of-way line, and it shall not exceed 25 feet in length in a driveway. Vehicles may be used for temporary sleeping quarters, but not rented. And there's certain requirements for that as well, too. In the example we've run into in the past is if someone has a child and, the grandparents come over to visit, that they have the ability to use that. We've also added that they should follow parking restrictions as defined in Title 10, and those are the parking restrictions for on-street parking of these vehicles. And then finally, if they're permanently stored in the property zoned in our MR or UR, they shall, within 10 feet of the property line, they shall be owned by the resident who is occupying their property, shall be placed on a paved surface, crushed limestone or other hard surface as approved by the zoning administrator, and shall be screened from public view and from the adjacent property with evergreen plants or a solid fence. And that's similar to the requirements of a dumpster enclosure. So we tried to kind of take the comments from the Plan Commission. I know there were a variety of comments we had. We tried to take those the best that we could, put this into a document that will hopefully work here. We did go through the findings of facts, and we believe it meets the requirements, so we recommend the Plan Commission recommend approval of the zoning text amendments related to recreation vehicles and storage of recreation vehicles and equipment.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions or comments or motions on this one? Commissioner Lytle.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to recommend the Common Council approve the zoning text amendment for Section 13-1-60, definitions R. Recommend the Common Council approve the zoning text amendment for Section 13-1-105M. And recommend the Common Council approve the zoning text amendment for Section 13-1-132P.
Motion by Commissioner Lytle. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Posey. Motion before the body. Any questions or comments on the motion? Commissioner Tucker-Long.
I know, I'm sorry. Okay, so I guess I'm really not in favor of this because I don't like the fact that we're limiting what people can do with their driveways. I mean, it seems weird that we're saying, hey, somebody can park a giant cargo van in their driveway forever if they want to, but a little teardrop camper, they're not allowed to, just because of what it's used for, that it's considered a recreational vehicle rather than a van. I mean, I know Commissioner Hinkard was, saying that's not something he wants to look at out the window, but is that really what our zoning ordinances should be for? I mean, we don't limit what people can paint their houses and things like that. It seems like this should be more of like a neighborhood covenant if you don't want to have that, rather than a citywide zoning ordinance. And I mean, saying that they could pave an area in their backyard to store it is just encouraging people to pave more. And then, we get into how much of their yard they're allowed to pave. And so then we get into people that can afford, it gets into a monetary issue then of people who have the means are now allowed to have this on their property where other people are not. And I guess when I drove around the city the last couple of days, there are tons of people who have RVs right now because traveling by airfare has been so difficult that a lot of people have gotten recreational vehicles and campers. And I hate limiting something that's encouraging people to get out to our parks and to be outside and to, recreate, I guess. One of my neighbors parks their boat in front of their house all winter, and here that wouldn't be allowed anymore. And I guess if people have worked hard and bought a house and want to have a boat, how is that different than anything else parked in their driveway? So.
I have a quick question for staff. Is the one section regarding driveway parking, is that section 13-1-132 and then number 5? Or is there?
Yes, it's the number 5 where it talks about not exceeding a length of 25 feet. And some of this language we just took from the old ordinance that didn't get rolled into the new ordinance. So there's been an ordinance on the books here previously to this, well, as long as I've been here. So, we tried to kind of take the comments we heard here and then also take what we had previously and put it together.
Commissioner Lytle.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and, maybe when I picture a recreational vehicle, camper, boat, whatever, that exceeds 25 feet in length, I don't think of a typical family camper. I think of, a Winnebago. I think of, a large boat that typically goes in on the lake at the beginning of the season and comes out on the end. And, not to generalize, but I think folks who can afford that size of a vehicle generally can afford to store it somewhere other than their driveway. And I know that you can always find exceptions, but, I'd be interested if we were going to change something, maybe it's not 25 feet. I don't know what the typical length of a family-sized camper is, whether it's 30 or, but in general, I think we should have an upper limit, whether it's 25 or something larger.
Commissioner Tucker-Long.
But that's just saying if it's over 25 feet, you can't put it in your driveway ever. We're still saying you can't permanently park your camper year-long in your driveway, no matter what size it is. So even the small teardrop campers wouldn't be allowed in a front or side driveway. So some people have the little bump out on the side of their house, and that wouldn't be allowed anymore for storing a camper.
Mr. Sir, is that accurate? I might be misreading it, but I didn't read the proposed changes.
If they're stored or parked a minimum of 10 feet from a property line, that's what it says. And I believe that's all the old ordinance as well, too.
I thought it said that they can't be stored in the front or side yards. They'd have to be stored in the rear yard if they're permanently stored.
It's permanently stored, it shall be rear. So we've got two different languages in there. So yes, it's a little bit inconsistent in there. We should probably take a look at that. Should be parked or stored a minimum of 10 feet from any property line or right-of-way line. So to your point, though, it does, the rear would trump it. So yes, it would not be allowed on that side.
So sorry, I'm confused now. So if someone had a driveway and the driveway was like in what you'd consider their front yard, so then it wouldn't be allowed, or it would?
The driveway for permanent storage?
Yeah.
No, that has not been allowed
Okay.
since years ago.
Okay. Commissioner Wood?
So, I don't remember where I was going to go with this. So if it's not used, so can it sit there for non-use for a period of 30 consecutive days? Am I reading that right?
Correct. For
Only 30. So then it just has to disappear for 24 hours somewhere? Is that how?
That's been done before. I mean, that's when people start to stretch.
Okay.
That's when we get into what's the, what is part of their intent, and usually the intent is there's a neighbor who's upset about it, and there's a whole litany of issues going on there. But yes, that has occurred before.
Okay.
I guess I'm going to call on myself real quick. I mean, generally speaking, I guess I'm probably more in line with what Commissioner Tucker Long is saying, in the sense that, like, as long as it's not blocking the sidewalk or causing some other site issue, I guess I don't really care. And I think, I mean, but also, like with what Commissioner Lytle said, there are some absolute gigantic, like, camper vans and stuff. And so, like, a lot of times we end up making ordinances for, like, edge cases or, like, worst case scenarios. So, like, if we had no limit, for most people, that's going to be fine. But I feel like there'll be a handful of people who are going to put, like, a camper the size of a house in their driveway, and it's, to the point where if it was a building, it wouldn't be allowed just because of how big it is. So I don't know necessarily how to square the circle or how to put that into the ordinance. But I would definitely, I think, be in favor of more leniency, I think. Commissioner Tucker Long.
Going off of what you just said, I mean, I guess if somebody has one 50-foot camper or two 25-foot campers parked in their driveway, one would be allowed and one wouldn't, but it's the same effect. You know what I mean? I guess I would rather see us have zoning laws that can be sort of consistently enforced. And if the solution is to back it out onto the street for 10 minutes and back it into your driveway because it wasn't there for 30 consecutive days because you moved it for 10 minutes, then I feel like this is not a well-written ordinance. You know what I mean? If you can get around it so easily. I mean, it almost seems like we could never really enforce it unless it was non-working, but we already have rules about non-working things, so that's already covered elsewhere. I'm all in favor of saying it can't block, maybe we say it can't block the public easement. And if somebody has a, 300-foot driveway and they put a 50-foot trailer in it, I mean, whatever. But if somebody has, a 20-foot driveway and they put a 25-foot trailer in it, it's hanging out into the street or it's blocking the sidewalk, that's where I have an issue. So.
Commissioner Lytle.
Yeah, I mean, props to staff for this version of it. I think you got a lot of things captured here. The question comes to my mind is, we had this type of ordinance for 30 years prior to the change, and whatever the number was, and I'm not aware of, I mean, maybe there were, but I'm not aware of it being a major issue with the city. But if we're going to fix it, try to fix it, capturing all of these things, rather than change it 2 or 3 times and have people kind of struggling to keep up. I do think, I would like to see a limit. Like, I don't think there should be 2 or 3 recreational vehicles stored on someone's property, and whether we get cute and say a combined length of 50 feet or whatever, I think we could find a way to get at the issues that Commissioner Tucker Long is raising, but also not open the door completely wide to people storing multiple things and calling them recreational vehicles. So I guess my suggestion, given how we're going around about this, would be to defer making a change here and looking into it a little more, but I know you've gone back and forth with us a couple times already.
I guess I would ask Mr. Sayre, do you feel like you have enough information to make more edits?
We can come back again. I mean, the intent of this was we're trying to proactively put this back in, and we weren't trying to make this obviously I never anticipated this to be such a discussion item. So and that's part why I'm kind of shaking my head on some of this too, of like we was identified by staff as, hey, we missed this, and then we should really put it back in. We're like, oh, okay, we'll just put it back in. And from a staff standpoint, if the desire from the Planning Commission and Council is we don't want to enforce those, we don't care. We don't really have a dog in this fight at all, to be honest with you. So we can come back with some ideas. We can take a look what other places have done. We can do that. As of right now, just so we all know, is we don't have any standards in there. So it's April, it's going to sometime get warm here. Obviously the storage issue probably is going to be coming up because these things are going to be popping back up and being used, hopefully being used. And, we've got some time until winter, I guess, unless it snows again. But, I mean, we can come back with some ideas and look at what other places have done. But like I said, I just want to be clear that never in my dreams I thought this would be such a long discussion. I have no problem with that. It's just like trying to combine all these ideas. We're struggling because we're obviously hearing from kind of two different opposing viewpoints and trying to somehow meet in the middle. And so we'll come back. What we can probably do is, I'm looking at Catherine here as I'm rambling, is probably maybe what we'll do is we'll try to put together maybe a list of how other places handle this and just give you guys a list of other communities and what they do. And not to say, not to completely chuck out what we've had previously, but I think we chuck it out for the time being, set it aside, show you what other places are doing and have done, and maybe that's how we kind of start with this and then build it from there. I don't know, that might be the best option. We'll all get educated on what everybody else is doing, and maybe we're doing it the same as them, maybe we're completely wrong, and then see maybe they've got something better that we can handle this by, or we can even call some places as well too if you have interest of, what is Fitchburg doing or whoever else. So if that's maybe the best approach of let's collect information and then hit the restart button, I guess might be the easiest way.
Does that make sense to people? Just informal taking the temperature, or do people, I guess we'll just maybe Alder Posey will just go down.
Yeah, I think there's different pieces of all of it, and I think we all know people on both sides, and as odd as it seems, it's kind of maybe this underlying community issue that I know I've heard from people in my area of this person's got this parked and it's a big issue, and then you also see the person with the little teardrop and you're like, it's no big deal. And it truly is one of these neighbor issues, I think, in a lot of ways, but to Commissioner Tucker Long's point is, what are we actually making the ordinance around? And I think that was kind of the best thought about this, is what are we trying to actually say here to help our community as a whole?
So then I guess, like I said, I'm trying to take the temperature of the room. Would you be okay then waiting another month?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Lytle?
Well, I made the motion originally, and I think it's a okay solution versus having nothing. But I also think it would be unfortunate for us to change it this month, identify some ways to improve it, and then change it again in a few months. So, yeah, I'm okay holding off.
Okay, I'm okay as well. Commissioner Wood?
So I'm okay holding off. I do just want to bring up something that I don't think any of us have brought up. Are we more concerned with the length of it, or is it a height issue? Because for me, a little teardrop is what, 5 feet? I have no idea. 5 feet tall? That I don't care about. It's more so an RV that's like, I can't even climb it because it's so tall. Part of me wonders if the root issue here is really how overtowering are these things. And I know they kind of go hand in hand. The longer they are, probably the taller they are. But I wonder if there's a happy medium where maybe that's getting too cute. X plus Y. You know, so that was just some thought, but yes, I'm good with holding off.
Commissioner Tucker-Long?
I am also good with holding off.
Okay. I'm going to say then, unless someone objects right now, that we have unanimous consent to send this back to staff. Seeing no objections, that will dispense with the motion. I did want to add, though, I agree with what Commissioner Wood said, that maybe it is height. And I don't necessarily know if communities have height restrictions. I don't know if that would necessarily be easy, but like I tend to fall on the, like, I don't really care as long as they're not blocking the sidewalk. However, I could see a public interest argument about like line of sight and stuff like that, in the sense that if, you know, and with impervious surface, if you couldn't just put up a whole nother building, you know, on your single family lot, then, you know, why can you park one there? And maybe that's not fair, so. But I would say, does staff have enough to proceed? Okay. We're good. Okay. Do you have too much? Too much?
Do we need to close out the previous, do we need to vote on the previous motion? Or do we need to make a motion to
With
cancel it?
unanimous consent, no.
Okay.
I mean, there's a couple different ways to handle it. Could have a motion refer, but I think since we had consensus, but if someone had said, no, I object, and you
Gotcha.
had the right to do that, then we would have to go back and deal with the motion. So,
I just wanted to make sure we weren't forgetting that we had a motion.
no, we should be good. So, with that, we will move on to 11F, which is a discussion and possible action regarding zoning text amendments relating to setbacks in the suburban industrial, neighborhood office, and pavement. Mr. Sayer.
I think this is easy. So we have some, once again, some setback issues we want to resolve in the SI and neighborhood office district. So the previous ordinance had a side yard setback in the SI district at 10 feet. The current ordinance changed it to 20 feet. We don't know why. We want to take that back to 10 feet to what it was. Same thing with the rear yard in the SI district. The previous ordinance had it at 20 feet. The current ordinance has it at 30 feet. We want to take that back to 20 again. And then lastly, the NO district had a previous rear yard setback at 25 feet. It got bumped to 30 for some reason. We want that back to recommend taking that back to 25. And then we also are recommending for all districts having a minimum pavement setback of 5 feet in all zoning districts, and part of that is just from all property lines, just so it's, the concern was raised by the building inspection to, you know, if you have someone putting a driveway in and it's right up to the lot line, it's ripe to create issues from a drainage standpoint and so on. So we want to kind of take that back to the 5-foot requirement. And we went through the finding of facts and all these, and it would meet the requirements if you chose to move forward with that, any of these amendments.
Commissioner Tucker-Long.
All right. I move that we recommend the Common Council approve the zoning text amendment for Section 13-1-101, bulk and dimensional standards to amend the side yard and rear setback for the SI zoning district and to amend the rear setback for the NO zoning district.
Motion by Commissioner Tucker-Long. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Posey. And then, of course, we need a separate motion for the pavement one.
No, you can do them all as once. We had it as one agenda item, and you can just tack that on to the motion. That'd be fine.
Would that be okay, Commissioner Tucker-Long, to add the pavement setbacks as well, or do we want to?
Yes, I wasn't finished speaking.
Oh,
and
sorry.
No, that's okay. I thought I was, but I didn't realize they were in two separate spots. Okay. Additionally, as part of the same motion, I recommend that the Common Council approve the zoning amendment for Section 13-1-101, bulk and dimensional standards to add a minimum pavement setback of 5 feet for all zoning districts.
And with the change, second, still good? Okay. Motion seconded. Motion before the body? Questions or comments on this one? Commissioner Lytle and then myself.
Sorry, this should be quick. I know I asked about this previously, and enough time has passed, I've forgotten. You know, we approve lots of these zero lot line, twin home sorts of situations. And how does the pavement setback for a driveway that's right on the lot line there work?
Well, those are different because of the classification of the actual dwelling itself. So in essence, those wouldn't apply in that situation.
Perfect.
So it doesn't, I guess, in essence. And initially, they built it as kind of one duplex unit, and they come back and split it anyway. So even if it wasn't in there, which it is, it would still be kind of grandfathered as part of that, too.
Got it.
So.
Thank you.
All right, I guess I have a question then, because then in the pavement one, it does say, 5 feet for all zoning districts. Like, so, I guess that maybe I'm just not understanding, but I don't see how that wouldn't impact townhomes and stuff like that, because if it's all zoning districts.
It's a shared driveway though, so we have different requirements also for
Okay.
shared driveways too. So that, I mean, that's kind of why in short, it's not a problem because the classification of how it's being utilized
Oh,
and
okay.
how it's applied.
Okay, I get it, yeah. No, and this is, like, I'm not a huge fan of setbacks at all, just because I feel like sometimes it eats up valuable land that could be used with buildings or put to other use. However, with pavements, I do think it's really valuable, because the way one person paves their yard could affect somebody else and cause flooding, which then the issue is crossing the property line. So this is something that I do think is probably good for just having a well-managed city. But motion before the body, questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of recommending to the Common Council to approve the zoning text amendments relating to setbacks in the suburban industrial, neighborhood office, and pavement sections signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? And that motion passes. Next, we'll move on to item 12, which is reports and comments from the Planning Department. Mr. Sayre.
I don't think we have any tonight. Next meeting is May 2nd, so back to Mondays again.
Great. With that, we'll move on to item 13, which is adjournment. A motion to adjourn would be in order.
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Alder Posey. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Tucker Long. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? And we are adjourned at 8:51 p.m. Thank you, everyone.